Larry Haber, a reformed yet long-recovered developer and now managing partner of the Commercial Real Estate Department of AGMB Law, as well as a non-practicing CPA and the creator of Leasing Reality, conducts an ongoing series of conversations infused with rock and roll, hip-hop, sports, pop culture, and historical questions with real estate and other business rock stars, designed to empower aspiring, emerging, and seasoned professionals and business owners to build a better foundation for both today and tomorrow.
Today on Real Estate Reality Check, we have with us someone who less than a decade ago took on a U2-like I will follow mindset when it came to his passion to make something out of nothing. Notwithstanding, at the time, he then possessed the equivalent of the title of an Elvis Costello song called Less Than Zero when it came to his base of knowledge in the world of commercial real estate. In spite of those challenges, he went on to build a value-added, tech-driven data engine employing sophisticated algorithms, and artificial intelligence that some may describe as maybe a commercial real estate data democracy. He did, and I may add, continues to do so, by not only subconsciously embracing the song titles Harder, Better, Stronger, Faster by Daft Punk, and It's in the Way That You Use It by Eric Clapton, but also by heeding the wisdom, among others, Jeff Bezos and his day one mindset, so as to essentially minimize the chances of Reonomy meeting up with the business equivalent of the schoolyard bully, ready to take his lunch and maybe give a metaphorical wedgie, but also to that of Ben Franklin's mantra of due diligence is the mother of good luck, and Yeats, the poet, who said, there are no strangers here, only friends who you haven't yet met, all of which he employed to ultimately co-found Reonomy as a consequence of being on a networking play date. And with props out to an old Grateful Dead tune and his co-founder, because Mr. Charlie told him so. Maybe you'll fill in the blanks on that afterwards, my friend. So I give to you my real estate brethren from the streets of London, the one language shy of being a polyglot and someone whose business he co-founded in college became the subject of a 60-minute segment, the truly fascinating CEO of Reonomy, my new friend, Rich Sarkis. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I have to say that is an all-time great intro. I'm going to have you speak at my funeral because give my eulogy. That's fantastic.
Okay, just to some of your investors, maybe. Okay,
exactly.
That'll help. So we're gonna get right into it, my friend. So with kudos out to songs by both Drake and the Talking Heads, please tell us how you went about starting from the bottom back in 2013, if I'm not mistaken, when you co-founded Reonomy, and how along the way you made sure that Reonomy was not put on a road to nowhere by embracing Michael Jordan's mantra of mastering the fundamentals.
That's right. So yeah, it's almost been a decade, and you mentioned it in the intro. I was introed to my co-founder, Charlie, by a VC that I've known now for 2 decades, back in 2012, actually. So 8 years ago, a little over. And as you also mentioned, less than zero, I knew nothing about commercial real estate. Not only did I know nothing about it, I didn't really spend any time thinking about it. I lived in a multifamily rental building. I worked in an office building, and that was pretty much it. But when I met Charlie and I started thinking about the space and we started discussing this massive asset class that's got trillions of dollars of value at stake on the debt and equity side and scores of stakeholders. And despite the size of the asset class, how inefficient it was, or how much opportunity there was to improve the way in which transactions happened. And then when I looked at the existing landscape and I saw a lot of big incumbents, some of them are very well-known, big public companies, but not a lot of them really, or none of them, frankly, when I looked at it, were delivering a modern solution, a tech-driven solution. So I saw that as a trifecta. Big market, there's some pain points and inefficiencies, hasn't really been a lot of technological innovation. So I saw that as a huge opportunity to build what now has become Reonomy. And to your point around the fundamentals, That's exactly what we did. We started small. We started in the fundamentals. We started at the ground floor. And as the song goes, if you can do it in New York, you can do it anywhere, right? And so we started in New York City and built the first version of our product right then and there in order to see fundamentally, can we actually deliver insights, data, information to brokers, lenders, investors, developers to allow them to do their jobs more efficiently and ultimately transact better. And so, yeah, that's how we got off the ground about 7-8 years ago now.
Okay, and I take it that you have achieved, at least you're on the road to achieving some of those goals.
Yes, thankfully, look, it has not been a straight line from A to B. There's been a lot of twists and turns. I like to joke that I had a full head of hair when I started Reonomy, and now you can look at me. We
have the same comedy writer.
Yeah, exactly. We have the same barber. So it's definitely not been a straight path, but thankfully we've had a lot of successes, and I would think that the successes have outweighed the setbacks over the years. But you learn just as much, if not more, from the things that don't work well. So I'm sure we'll speak a bit about how that's gone over the years, and really listening to people and listening to customers, good, bad, and ugly, has been the key.
You mean listening, the lost art? Okay.
Yes, the lost art of listening.
It's amazing how much you learn by listening.
And it's amazing how few people actually want to listen, other than want to listen to themselves talk sometimes. And so, look, listening, there's a lot of, and you just have to go on LinkedIn and TEDx Talks and all that stuff. There's a lot of folks who will train you how to speak and give speeches and oratory skills, but listening is just as important, and frankly, I think very underappreciated and underinvested in.
Oh yeah, the early part of my career, I'd say until I was probably pushing 40, I generally like to be the first person to talk in the room, and I realized that was just not the way to go. Because once I start talking, generally speaking, some people think I don't shut up. So I'll have my time, and I realized, what I get being able to listen and try to be the last person to speak, and you get the vibe in the room, you get to get a feel on what makes somebody hot, what makes somebody not, and how you could adjust to what your client's needs are. It was incredible, no question about it. So Southern rock legends, the Allman Brothers, had a song called Ain't Wasting Time No More. So with many in real estate trying to maximize their productivity and not be guilty of this nasty little 4-letter word called inefficiency, at what point in your career did you discover that there was inefficiencies in this industry?
Very early on. And as I mentioned, I did not know anything about it, but I immersed myself in discussions with brokerages at small, medium, and large brokerage firms, with lenders at local banks, but also massive sort of Fortune 50 banks as well, and investors, developers, you name it. I wanted to hear what they did from the time they got up in the morning to the time they went to bed, how they spent their professional lives. And I was floored by how much opportunity there was to improve efficiencies. And what we really focused in on and honed in on early on is whether they were brokers, investors, developers, lenders, they were spending far too much time trying to gather the data, find where the information is, find out something as basic as who owns a property, how much debt is on a property, tax information. It's all out there. It's all publicly available. But the problem is sometimes it's not digitized. Oftentimes, even if it is, it's very unstructured and dirty. And you have to spend most of your working hours sort of being a detective, right? And trying to figure that all out. And what was worse is once you got all the data there, you just looked at it and then you got drowned in all the data, right?
Right, you got it. It's aggregated. What do you do with it?
Right, exactly. Because going from data to information to insight is really where it's at, right? And so I found out very early on that there was an opportunity to leverage technology, but do so in a modern way. And when I say modern, is that my iPhone is essentially a supercomputer, right? Compared to the first laptop and computer I had, but it's incredibly intuitive. A 2-year-old could use it, knows how to swipe and do all that kind of stuff. And so we wanted to develop Reonomy's first product with that in mind, that it would do the dirty work for you, the grunt work on the back end, and do all these computations and data cleansing and validation, et cetera, but deliver it in a simple, intuitive, elegant interface that folks would not only know how to use, but would love using.
Okay, fabulous. So then I'm going to take a little bit of a different direction, but play off of that. And the CEO of Gabelli Asset Management once said, always keep your portfolio and your risk at your own individual comfortable sleeping point. So speaking of portfolios, you mentioned to me offline about ownership portfolio being a pivotal moment for your team at Reonomy. So with props out the different versions of the song by the Beatles, I think Neil Young, Taylor Swift, and even the Backstreet Boys. Tell me why.
Why? Yes, I won't attempt to sing any of those versions, even though I think I'm guilty of singing them in the shower. Own a portfolio, and we actually just had a board meeting last week where we demoed the owner portfolio to our investors. And one of the things I said, because I whipped out a board deck from back in 2014, so 6 years ago, and literally I had a slide there saying, owner portfolio, the next frontier, here's what we're gonna do. And it took us 6 years to do because it's damn hard. No one really does it properly. And we had to really invest in a lot of technology. We've brought in amazing, much smarter than I people to help crack that code. And I'll tell you a little bit about what that is. So Reonomy has always been really good at taking a property-centric view, meaning you give me an address, 123 Main Street, or you give me a neighborhood or a borough like Brooklyn or Greenpoint, or it doesn't matter. And we'll tell you what there is to know about those properties or a single property, who owns it, the debt, the taxes, as I mentioned, the zoning. Is it part of an assemblage? Who are the tenants? Who used to be the tenants, et cetera, et cetera. And that's sort of that property-centric view. It starts with the property at the core. But what we found is there is a lot of value in being able to take a company or person-centric view as well. I'll give you a company, whether it's Amazon or Sony or CBRE or JP Morgan or whatever, and we'll tell you all the different other companies associated with it, and most importantly, the properties associated with that company. Let's take JP Morgan as an example. That's a perfect one, right? JP Morgan is a lender on a bunch of properties, and we can give you the portfolio of all the properties that JP Morgan is the original note holder on. We can also take a tenant view and see, let us show you all the properties where JP Morgan is a retail tenant or an office tenant, right? That's another portfolio view. And JP Morgan also owns a lot of properties. So here's a portfolio of JP Morgan's ownership properties, right? And how those have evolved over time, the mix of properties, et cetera. That sounds, again, easy, but like a lot of things in life, unbelievably hard, because typically those different entities, so JP Morgan is sort of the master entity, has a whole bunch of other companies that are nested beyond that, different affiliates, subsidiaries, LLCs, corporations, trust. In order to build that graph of how they all relate, there's a lot of brain damage that occurs. And so we've turned to machine learning and AI for the first time in the industry to really crack that code. And that's why we're incredibly excited, as are our customers and clients, about this new owner portfolio frontier that we're about to cross.
So you mentioned the word insight before, okay, and you also, I mentioned in the intro, I said I used an Eric Clapton line about it's in the way that you use it.
Yeah.
So it seems as if what you're creating is allowing to make it easier to use the data that you're able to accumulate and give. Does it allow the players to have insight as well when they're looking at your data? Yeah.
Exactly, right. Insight is a great sort of is the sort of final frontier. And I'll give you an example. Now, if I'm a loan originator at JP Morgan, I've got the insight of knowing, because I can actually do a search now. Show me all the owners who owned at least 50 properties in this market and whose total debt across that portfolio is $100 million, making up numbers, and whose average vintage is about 5 to 7 years, right? So they've taken out loans within that window. So they're kind of in the refinancing window. That insight is what I want as a loan originator, is like gold dust, right? So doing that kind of analysis is just so valuable to the end user that you're exactly right. Insight is where it's at.
Yeah, that's incredible. So right now, you mentioned before you're working with a handful of key industries. brokerages, banks, lenders, field service providers. So with props out to the line, this is the day of the expanding man. It's a line in the song Deacon Blues by Steely Dan. With this introduction of ownership portfolios, can you anticipate expanding into any other industries?
Yes, and we've already had a lot of inbound inquiries. We've even sold some early versions of this owner portfolio product to a lot of broader segments in the capital markets area. So I'm talking about not just the banks that we already work with lenders, et cetera, but also hedge funds, private equity, other institutional investors who actually care about commercial real estate, not because they're necessarily direct participants, i.e. they're not necessarily lending to the landlords or buying properties, but they care about commercial real estate as an investable asset class. And they're used to dealing with data and insights, as we just talked about. And so they're very thirsty for this type of analysis. And so we really think that's going to unlock. Insurance is another one that we're working increasingly with. A lot of opportunity there.
So with a hedge fund, it could allow them to make a bet better, if that's the right word.
Exactly right.
With insurance, I think I heard you say something about, in one other interview I had heard or read about storm chasers and how it relates to insurance.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so storm chasers work with insurance companies, and basically their job is literally that. They're not the ones in that Bill Pullman movie where they're going and literally driving into the tornado. But what they do is they chase the storm, meaning if they know that a big storm, a hurricane, a whatever is going to affect the region, what they'll do is they'll try to find out who owns the properties in that region, reach out to the owners and say, hey, we can help repair your roof or the damage from the storm, working with your insurance company. And that has two benefits. One is it helps make something more efficient, i.e. the owner doesn't have to worry about that. But also there's sort of a societal benefit where these properties are not laying damage for longer than they have to. And so that is one use case. Other use cases within the insurance has to do with underwriting, risk mitigation, better understanding of who you are insuring, not just a single property, but their portfolio of properties, right? Because you could be insuring one portfolio or one property, but if their portfolio is decrepit, you want to know that. Same thing with lending and underwriting. There's what we call a KYC, a know your customer use case that's very interesting as well.
That's incredible, my friend. So there's a song out there. It's an old time song. This could be the start of something big. And I think it's apropos here. It was sung by these older legends, Tony Bennett, Bobby Darin, Ella Fitzgerald, and I think even the great Aretha Franklin. So it sounds like you're on the cusp of launching something even bigger with ownership portfolio. It seems to me, at least. So listen. So that the question I'm trying to get to is so that our listeners aren't, as the song Bruce Springsteen goes, not blinded by the light. What are some of the blind spots you're seeing within the commercial real estate industry?
It's interesting. There's an analogy that I had when I first sort of immersed myself in commercial real estate. I thought that the big value add that we in Reonomy could provide is sort of lifting the veil. And we even said lifting the veil on commercial real estate, and that we were helping the brokers, the lenders, the investors, developers sort of see more clearly in front of them, right? It was hazy and like with data, insights, information. Now, what I'm seeing is the blind spot is increasingly with solutions such as ours, it's easier to see clearly in front of you. You know where you're headed. You know information about a property and now about a portfolio and companies with this new product we've launched. The next frontier and the blind spot, so to speak, is seeing around corners. How do I know what's going to happen before it happens or what's likely to happen, right? Nobody can tell with certainty. And that's the world of predictive analytics, right? So let's go back to owner portfolio. Not only can we tell you what somebody's portfolio looks like currently, we can tell you what it's looked like over time. And because of that, we can do some forward sort of prognostication and say, what is it likely to look like over time, right? When there is a macroeconomic recession, or when it's an election year, or when the currency fluctuates in this way, what does this owner typically do? And so that kind of predictive analytics, and are they likely to be sellers or buyers in the market? Those are the blind spots that we are attacking pretty head on right now.
That's incredible. Are you using AI to do that?
Yes, we're using machine learning. At the beginning, we weren't. We were just using our own what's called rules-based algorithms. So if then this, for people who use Excel, they'll be familiar with those kind of things. But yes, we've had to use machine learning and AI to basically try and predict what's going to happen with a certain degree of confidence, and being able to also communicate that degree of confidence to our customers as well. So it's not sort of a black box.
It's funny. I don't know if you know this, but one of my opening lines is that I'm a reformed yet long recovered developer. And 2009 kind of changed the equation. If I would have had this then, I would not be reformed and recovered, dude.
I've heard that a lot.
Where were you a decade ago?
I've heard that a lot. But we're here now, thankfully.
Yeah, I hear you.
Hey, could you just help me resolve this issue with the landlord work letter?
Why don't you come back later?
Okay.
Hey, can you help me with this letter of intent?
Not now.
Hey Rich, can you please help me with this good guy guarantee language?
Not now. There should be a better place for my brokers to get these answers.
Now there is. Leasing Reality. Master your leasing domain. This podcast is powered by Leasing Reality. Tough negotiation? Invest in your career, whether you're an aspiring, emerging, or seasoned commercial real estate professional, by mastering the preparation and negotiation of a letter of intent and the business aspects of a lease from both the landlord and tenant perspective. Watch, listen, and/or read Leasing Reality's content at your own speed. Learn more at leasingreality.com.
So playing off the line, son of a gun, you better change your act, from a Grateful Dead tune by Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter, who wrote it with him, called U.S. Blues. Given all the changes in life, mindset, business due to the impact of COVID-19, tell us why COVID and other macro events impacting commercial real estate may keep you tossing and turning at night. And how have you changed your act as a result of this? We'll call it the new abnormal we're all facing.
Yeah. Yes. I'll talk a little bit about us as a company and what we've done, maybe as a little bit of a twist. And so come March, we've actually been exclusively remote. Every one of our 150 or so employees are all remote, right? And some of them are scattered throughout the US and even throughout the world. And we found it to be very doable, actually. It's just as efficient. And obviously we do miss some of that human interaction, but we've got an amazing people team that's done a great job bringing us together, having virtual happy hours, show and tell, talent shows, etc., to maintain that connection. But there is no doubt that COVID, because of the nature of this sort of macroeconomic external shock, i.e. it is a virus that doesn't care what time of year it is, apparently, what creed you are or anything like that. It's sort of the great equalizer from that perspective, has compelled us to sort of change the way or reimagine the way in which we work and live. And so, it does still keep me up at night that we're still, figuring out just what the ramifications are going to be. And unlike the 08-09 recession, right, where it was, okay, this is the key cause. It was a moment in time, and then there was regulatory things that came into play. Certain companies went, Bear Stearns went belly up, et cetera. And then after that, you have a recovery, or even before that, the 01 dot-com bubble bursting. All these things were very defined and set. With this virus, it's still sort of fluid in terms of how long it's going to last and the definition. And that uncertainty breeds additional anxiety within the general economy, but I would say even more acutely within commercial real estate, because that is such a tangible asset class that requires people to be in the assets that thrive.
It's a great unknown right now.
Yes, that's the problem. And it's the unknown that keeps me up at night the most.
So Bill Gates once said, software innovation, like almost every other kind of innovation, requires the ability to collaborate and share ideas with other people, and to sit down and talk with customers and get their feedback and understand their needs. And we touched upon that earlier, but how did Bill's quote, if at all, help you, basically come up with the idea for Reonomy, and how do you continue to tweak it along the way to adjust?
It's a great question. As I alluded to, I knew nothing about commercial real estate, and I knew that I knew nothing. And so I said that the one thing I do pretty well is listen, right? So I immersed myself and I met with a bunch of lenders, brokers, developers, et cetera. And I listened to them and said, again, tell me what you do, tell me what's broken, what works well, what doesn't, what do you wish you had if you had a magic wand and I could make it appear right there. And that was sort of the genesis of the first year in which we were developing this beta version of our product. And then what we did is we just gave it away for free in exchange for a bunch of feedback. Again, tell me what's good, bad, indifferent. Don't be afraid of offending me. The more feedback, the better. I've got thick skin. And really took all that feedback and listened. And that enabled us, even back then, 7, 8 years ago, to iterate on the product. And it's still very core to our DNA. We've got an amazing product and design and what we call user research, user experience team. That is what they do. They spend their time immersed with our customers because we know what we don't know and we know who knows it. And those are the professionals who do this for a living. So who are we to say, hey, by the way, you've been doing this all wrong. I've got this new solution. I want you to unlearn everything you've learned over the last 3 decades and learn it my way. That's arrogance personified. What we said is we want to hear from you what works well, what do you want to do more of, less of, et cetera. And we'll listen to that and we'll help use that to shape our product development roadmap. And that's really been a key mantra for us throughout.
That's an incredible point. And hopefully people truly listen to what you just said, because it's just the way that you do business. It's the way you grow.
Yeah, that's part of our DNA.
So Bret Michaels and his heavy metal band Poison, they had a #1 hit single back in the 80s called Every Rose Has Its Thorn. So piggybacking off of some of the prior questions, with as good as prop tech and other forms of technology can be for real estate, what do you perceive as some of prop tech's thorns?
Look, some of it is also selling a prop tech solution into an industry that hasn't had much innovation is tough, right? And so part of the thorn, I don't know if it's the prop tech or the industry in general's thorn, is that the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, is something that I and others in the prop tech space have had to overcome and try to overcome, and we still haven't fully overcome it. Ironically, COVID and the sort of the shock we're in right now has helped companies more embrace data, technology, efficiencies, et cetera, because they've sort of had to survive. And so I would say one of the thorns is just trying to get people to listen to you and make sure that they are at least open to the solution that you want them to listen to you about.
Yeah, because the bottom line is we don't know everything. And I think actually I'm going to touch upon that in a question or two. So one of the legendary taglines by the sportscaster Dick Enberg, who was just great, was that of, "Oh my," when something magical happened at a sporting event like the World Series on Saturday night. There's some crazy stuff that went on. Yeah. So with Dick Enberg's line in mind, was there one single deal or transaction that you can point to as your prop tech has arrived, oh my moment?
Well, it was an oh my. It was almost an oh my / oh shit moment. So
those are good.
So I remember, as I was mentioning, we spent the better part of a year developing that first version of the product. So now here we are in early 2014, and we've got the beta version, and it works. You can type in an address anywhere in New York City, and it'll pop up that property, show you how much debt is on it, who the lender is, and very importantly, who the owner is and how to get in touch with that owner, et cetera. So I remember being in Chad Treadway's office. Chad at the time was the head of commercial term lending on the East Coast for JP Morgan Chase. He's over time become a good friend. So it's sort of foreshadowing that the meeting went well. But at the time, he was sort of skeptical because he had seen a lot of solutions and all that stuff. Said, okay, pull up this property. I don't remember the address, 123 Main Street. And obviously he knew about it. And I knew that he knew. And so this was a test. So I put it up live on the computer and said, okay, all right, I see you've got the loan there. And okay, you've got Larry is the owner. All right, well, you've got a phone number there. Okay, gets the conference call, the conference phone sitting on this big conference. Hey, let's call Larry right now and see if he picks up. It's like, oh shit. Okay, this is really going to test if this is just some, BS phone number. It's not Larry or whatever. And he picked up. And they started talking. And from what I tell, and we've sort of joked about this, I think he got Larry to refinance with JP Morgan several weeks later. But that was sort of the, oh my, this could actually work. And this can actually help these folks do their job more efficiently. And seeing that actually happen, quote unquote, in the wild, where it wasn't sort of me coming up with a pitch can demo and saying, okay, here are the properties I'm going to pull up, because obviously you can always juice those and only show you the ones that I know work. This was a property I didn't know from any others that he just asked me to pull up, and he was able to actually do what it is he wanted with a few clicks. And that was my big oh my moment for sure.
So it doesn't matter really if you're with a big firm or you're just a 5-person shop, is what it comes down to.
That's right. I mean, these are solutions though for commercial real estate professionals, right? So we tend to focus on those companies, those individuals who do this for a living and not just sort of hobbyists, so to speak. That said, you're right. It doesn't matter if you're a 2-person brokerage firm in the Midwest or your CBRE, the solution is applicable for you.
Yeah, because using some crazy line. I remember what comes to my mind is the Terminator. You remember Bill Paxton's character? He said something as to someone, that guy's a couple of cans short of a 6-pack.
Right.
You basically are delivering those cans. Okay, is what it comes down to.
Yes, I've also been called a couple of packs short of a 6-pack myself, so I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
You have to be a little bit like that to be an entrepreneur.
Oh, there's no question. Just with the movie Jerry Maguire, if you remember Tom Cruise's classic line as he was professing his love to Dorothy Boyd, he said, "You complete me." So theoretically, your goal is that this Reonomy helps complete a lot of people out there who might not otherwise have the knowledge.
That's right.
So you're piggybacking off that. So with Dorothy Boyd, if you remember in Jerry Maguire, she replied to this heartfelt speech by Jerry with the line, "You complete me." Well, no, excuse me. She said, that's what he said to her.
Right.
He said, "You had me at hello."
That's right.
So whether from a client, a peer, an adversary, competition, what was the most rewarding thing ever said to you in a business setting?
It's tough to choose one, honestly, because we do get a lot of great feedback. And look, we've had our fair share of licks and criticisms as well. That's why constructive feedback is what we thrive on. We do have this tool it's called Slack. It enables us to sort of communicate internally, and there's different channels. And we have one channel, it's called Client Wins, where folks throughout the company, typically those that interact with our customers, can post things that they've heard their customers say, either in a review or something that's happened. And just last week, we had somebody who said that they were having a really tough time with COVID, right? They are a full-time mortgage broker. I forget where, somewhere actually, I think in the Midwest. And they, from March through June or July, were having a really tough time. And then they decided to start using the Reonomy product. And they said that they've originated over $27 million in new loans in the subsequent last few months. And they said it was an absolute game changer for them.
Really? Making a difference. I like it.
Yeah, and then look, this makes a difference to, we're not curing world hunger or world peace or anything like that. But increasingly, and it's been very true in 2020, that we have been able to see this is making a real meaningful impact in people's livelihoods and lives and ability to put food on the table, which to me is incredibly gratifying. And that's definitely the thing that was very rewarding to see.
So as a preface to the next question, there was this old British comedian called Benny Hill.
Yes, I know him well. I grew up in London. Benny Hill is
exactly. Okay. And London Calling. So and he had a line about how one should, and I quote, "never play leapfrog with a unicorn." Okay. So with that scarring public service announcement behind us, describe what you're seeing that excites you in terms of prop tech focused unicorns.
It's a good question, and I've said this in the past. I try not to get caught up in the unicorn hype, actually, because I think a lot of it sort of creates some unnecessary noise. I've always said, and I don't know if Benny Hill said this one, but I always would rather be a cockroach than a unicorn when it comes to business, because in really tough times, guess who survives? It's not the unicorn, it's the cockroach, right? And so, and I remember saying that to somebody once, and then it got picked up in the media, and then there was this sort of cartoon of a unicorn looking in the mirror and seeing a cockroach reflect back to him. And so I would say, I don't really know like where I think the next unicorn is going to come with, but some of my advice for any business person, whether you're a broker, full-time in the industry, or an entrepreneur thinking about setting up your new company, don't focus on being the next unicorn. Focus on being incredibly resilient, persistent, etc., to always live to fight another day. Because we've had, near-death experiences at Reonomy too, where stuff was not working well, where we were struggling to figure out how to replicate the New York City product nationwide and other challenges and all that stuff. But if you can have that sort of back against the wall mentality and survive and thrive, that's definitely what's going to sort of help keep the lights on and enable you to be successful.
So along those lines, you obviously expanded from just New York City to be national. Is, using the line from the song The Clash, is London calling and beyond as far as the reach of Reonomy?
It is, and it was. Going into this year, one of our big goals, and we had done a lot of the research and the pre-work, et cetera, was to expand internationally. Go to the UK, not just London, but the UK. Canada was on the roadmap. A few other countries we were looking at. Now with COVID, that put a wrench in it. So I, along with the management team, decided to pump the brakes a little there and to sort of hunker down on the US, and obvious reasons for that, right? And so it's still paused for now. It's not stopped, it's paused. I don't know if it's going to get unpaused next year, the year after, or the year after that, but certainly there is strong demand for what we are doing and have done really well in the US and other markets. And we know that firsthand because a lot of our big customers, whether they be banks, brokerage firms, investors, developers, insurance companies, have global businesses. And so they've told us they really want us to expand our coverage to cover other markets and geographies as well.
Okay, so hopefully soon enough. Two more questions. We're in the home stretch, my friend. So if I tasked you to conduct a leasing intervention, for whether it be a broker, an attorney, owner, tenant, or any other aspiring or emerging, seasoned professional, real estate professional, with props out to a song by, Pink Floyd. So if you can only give them another brick in the wall, and you only had just one brick of, from a knowledge perspective, what would that brick be?
It's a good question. It's a simple answer. Just do not be afraid of technology and data, but don't let the tail wag the dog, as I like to say. What I mean by that is there's a lot of prop tech and tech solutions and data out there. So what that broker needs to understand is, where do I really need help? What do I want to change in the way I do business? Am I spending too much time, as I said early on, looking for data and doing the grunt work? Am I struggling to find potential buyers for my exclusive listings? Am I struggling to find exclusive listings? Where are my pain points? And then turn to technology in order to solve those. Don't start with saying, okay, I've got this shiny new toy that I heard about. It's this new tech that everyone's talking about. I don't even know what it does, but it's got a few buzzwords that sound good, AI, machine learning, et cetera. And now what, right? So if you let the tail wag the dog, you're actually starting with the solution without understanding what your problem is. So always start with, what are my problems? And then you will find the right solution for you.
Okay, so don't use the technology as a crutch.
Exactly, and don't use it for the sake of technology or say that you're using it. Use it because you have a real use case for it.
So business, like life, is all about how you make people feel. It's that simple and it's that hard. Yes. That's not my quote, by the way. That was by famed restaurateur Danny Meyer in his book, Setting the Table. So Rich, close things out for us. When you're preparing for a meeting or a new business pitch, how do you go about setting the table so that the recipe for success you've cooked up is well received?
That's so true. And I'm a big fan of Danny Myers, and I believe in that. There is an emotional component to business and even buying, right? Whether you're buying the experience or the food at a restaurant or buying software, I mean, it is an emotional sort of visceral reaction. And I'll go back to what I said. One of the things I try to do is not come into a meeting thinking, I'm going to tell you that what you've been doing is wrong and I've got the best thing since sliced bread, etc. I'm going to come and listen to you and get to know you, because I understand that it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a big global bank or you are a new broker who's just starting off in their career. You're a person and you're a human and you have a perspective. And I think if you treat whoever it is that you are having that meeting with as a person and understand what their frustrations, fears, excitements are, that meeting and whatever it is that you are pitching them or selling them is going to be so much better received. And that's very true for a broker too, as they're trying to gain new business and try to deepen their relationship with their existing customers. I always say, pick up the phone when you don't need anything from someone on the other end of the line, right? Just establish that relationship as a person. And that, I think, is something that I have definitely seen work well, and something I really try to bring to the table, so that, as you said, whatever I've cooked up is well received.
Okay. Pearls of wisdom, my friend. Thanks so much for coming on. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Okay, we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Please know that it would be greatly appreciated if you could kindly download, subscribe, rate, and review Real Estate Reality Check on Apple Podcasts by way of the episode page, podcast page, or rerealitycheck.com. The content of this podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to solicit business or to provide legal advice. Our listeners should not take or refrain from taking any legal action based upon the information contained in this podcast without first seeking professional counsel. Prior results do not guarantee future success. Are you on the search for dynamic legal representation for you and/or your business? Abrams, Garfinkel, Margolis, Bergson LLP's full-service law firm is dedicated to smart, practical, and cost-effective counsel, providing the highest level of legal services to its clients. The AGMB team primarily represents clients in residential and commercial real estate transactions, banking, brokerage, and mortgage compliance, as well as entertainment industry services. AGMB has offices located in New York, Long Island, and California. Learn more and visit agmblaw.com today.